From WNIN News, this is the Friday Wrap. I'm John Gibson. On today's show, we welcome Sarah Lesh of the Evansville Courier and Press to talk about the future of water in the Evansville area. We'll listen back to Tim Jagielo's feature on hurricane aid. Our Peggy Pirro speaks to the Evansville Philharmonic's Roger Callia and co-host Bill Heminger about a new Inside the Music podcast. Jevin Redman will be along for the sports chat, and we'll run down the weekend notebook. A Friday Wrap is next on WNIN FM with support from Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations following the news from NPR. It's the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson. Thank you for joining us on this Friday. Well, the Evansville Water and Sewer Utility has temporarily paused its plans for a new water treatment plant and is considering groundwater as another source of drinking water for the area. The utility has already spent $7 million on design work for the new treatment plant. So what's next? Sarah Lesh of the Evansville Courier Press has been following the story, and she joins me now. Sarah, as always, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Well, the city is looking at the groundwater option because of new federal rules on PFAS chemicals, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, basically, what are these new guidelines regarding these chemicals?
So they have to have a ability to test for them locally, and so they have to have that in place by 2025. A plan
What's
for
the plan for it, right?
Yes, the plan for treating these forever chemicals which is what they sometimes refer to PFAS as, and so. Then after 2025, they have to present that they have this plan in place of how to handle it. And then within 5 years after that, so by 2030, they have to actually have that plan implemented. And so according to Vic Kelson, who's the new executive director for the Evansville Water and Sewer Utility, when they were talking about, how Evansville would do that, could do that, when it comes to the idea of also being in this current predicament of, from their perspective, just absolutely having to put a new water treatment plant in place. It's over 130 years old.
Right.
So with that, for adding that ability, testing for PFAS on site, it'd be about $100 million in additional cost from what they were told initially, just from planners who helped them look at options for what that would do. So essentially just a huge cost that with already looking at a more than $200 million plant possibility would have bumped it, nearing $400 million in total, and just something that the city really couldn't swallow at this point in time.
Right. So the groundwater idea, would that mean that they expect fewer PFAS chemicals from groundwater? I mean, I guess the Ohio River has a lot of PFAS. Is that do we know that for a fact?
I can't say for a fact anything specific about the water in the Ohio River, but with the groundwater option, they did testing. They dug wells for testing, which showed that there were none of the markers. All of this is incredibly technical, scientific things, so I'm trying to just make it as simple as possible. But the markers for PFAS, they weren't finding at levels that are not allowable. So the groundwater has created a potential option. So at this point, they still Kelson said that about 3 to 6 months will be needed to fully explore the groundwater option. And so from that point on, is when we could see, as you talked about in the lead-in, a little bit of how maybe these designs that have already been put in place could potentially change again from when they changed about a year ago now. Yeah.
Now, so this could mean the construction of a different kind of plant. Is that right? A groundwater plant?
Yeah. So essentially, it is already a hybrid plan for the new water treatment facility. At the end of last year, when Lane Young, who was the previous water and sewer director, before the end of the year, the last meeting of the year, if I remember correctly, or second to last, the Water and Sewer Board and the utility announced that they were seeing costs throughout the process that were just astronomical for what the city could afford, what the utility could afford, and really what consumers and customers could afford, because those costs do show up in rates. But so at that point, the decision was made to essentially reboot the plan a little bit in a way for the current treatment plant has essentially a north and a south location. They would renovate the south location, not build from new, to save some costs there. And then essentially across the way, across the roadway, would be a new build, which would replace the north side of the current plant. Whereas previously, the idea was that plant would be shut completely and an entirely new facility would be built.
Right. Now, as I understand it, this groundwater option, other places are doing it. Other cities, as I understand it anyway, along the Ohio River. It's not obviously not a whole new idea, but it would be something new for Evansville, right?
Yes, it would be. It would be new for groundwater to be an option. And so I would imagine that within this next 3 to 6 months, there will be a lot of internal research that they have, and then some that we as the public will get to learn a little bit more about how this process works. They do also have public board meetings that anyone could attend and ask questions about the process and things like that. But for as far as kind of where this could take us, it would mean that north side of the plant that they're building from the ground up essentially could potentially look different with a groundwater option as opposed to like the surface water option.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned rates, and a phased-in water rate increase is already underway, as I understand it. Do we know if the rates will change if a groundwater plant becomes part of the plans?
So I don't have a specific answer on, anything rates going up, rates going down. As you mentioned, we are already in a phased-in rate increase, which is connected to the building of a new treatment plant. And so that's already been approved by the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. It's already in place. You, as a bill payer, should have seen that your rates probably increase some. And
with more increases to come, obviously.
Yes, with more increases to come. Your average payment by about 2026, I think the increase is about $58 by that point in time. And so that, again, with rates, as we mentioned, the Utility Regulatory Commission, if anything with rates will change regarding the potential of groundwater, it will have to go in front of that commission again. So there would be an additional rate case, or at the very least, a new filing connected with the rate case that was already in place for the plant. I did reach out to the OUCC, which is the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor, which is an advocate essentially for ratepayers and customers. And they said that they were aware recently, just as the public kind of was, of the exploration of groundwater here in the city, and that, they're interested to see what that will turn out to be. And anything with rates would be decided at a later time. So even though we're looking at the 3 to 6 months exploration of groundwater, anything with rates would certainly be much longer than that.
No doubt. Just to take a quick pause here. This is the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson. My guest is Sarah Lesh of the Evansville Courier and Press. You can see her stories at courierpress.com. Well, Sarah, so I guess if we do in fact see a groundwater plant built here in Evansville, then I guess we'd be getting water from two sources then, the groundwater and the river. Is that what they're thinking is a possibility?
Yes, so the two-source option, which also is a notable thing, of course, as well, that getting your drinking water from one source is it's a limited access to that. So the two source would diversify the ability of the water and sewer utility to provide that drinking water. And there wouldn't be, the idea of it just being groundwater. It would still be both areas that they would draw from.
Yeah. Now, we mentioned that the utility has already spent about $7 million on design work for the new treatment plant. And we talk about this pause. I mean, I guess how much of a pause is it really? I mean, there's still work going on. Is that right?
Yeah. So the temporary pause, if you look at it with the north and the south plants, as the director sort of explained it to me, the pause is on a potential new build. So those renovations to the south plant are going to be continuing.
So those
They're
are
going
still
to be
going
happening.
on. Yeah,
Yes.
right.
Those will continue to happen because the choice of groundwater or not does not impact those. And so that's already underway. The total cost that they're currently looking at is about $258 million for the hybrid plan that's in place at the moment. The utility has said that the use of groundwater could save potentially $50 million from that total cost. And of course, I'm sure the 258, there's, slight elevation or lowering of that to be specific with. But a lowering of $50 million would be quite a bit, both for the utility and potentially for, future rate increases. They could be lower than would have been with that extra 50 in the total budget. But that will be, again, as we mentioned, something that comes in a later rate case, but they'll still be doing some work to start, and then I guess maybe about 6 months from now we'll be able to find out what that north plant will look like as well.
And of course, as we speak about the north plant and the south plant, we're talking on about two sides of Waterworks Road, correct?
Yes. So the current facility is all on one side of the road. That they have the north and the south of that, and then this new plant would be essentially across the road from where that one is right now.
Across from Waterworks Road. Well, as you mentioned, looks like at least 3 to 6 months before we know for sure what moves might be made here. Is there anything else to add that we haven't touched on here?
I don't think there's anything at this point. It'll be a few more months before we find out a decision, but there might be some things in the exploration process that we get to find out, see how some of those tests are going and things like that. But otherwise, for right now, customers shouldn't see any major impact. Those rate increases that were in place are still in place, and any potential ones in the future will be just that. Far down the line.
Yeah. You mentioned the wells. There have been some tests with wells. And obviously folks in more rural areas use well water a lot. Do we know, and this may be further down the line than we have any idea at this point, do we know if that would affect the quality or the taste of water if we switch to a groundwater system or at least partially a groundwater system?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. That's one that I haven't asked, and as far as I know, hasn't really just been discussed yet. But that would be one to ask down the line for sure. Yeah.
Yes, indeed, no doubt. That is Sarah Lesh of the Evansville Courier and Press. You can read her stories about this and many other things at courierpress.com. As always, Sarah, thank you so much for the time. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for your insights. All right, well, coming up on the Friday Wrap, we'll hear from WNIN's Tim Jagielo. We'll listen back to a feature he did this past week about hurricane aid for Hurricane Helene victims, that aid originating from the Evansville area. That is straight ahead on the Friday Wrap. I'm John Gibson. Hope you can stay with us.
This week on Afterglow, it's a case of mistaken identity in the Great American Songbook, as I look at songs with the same title that are often confused for one another. Songs like Who Can I Turn To, How Little We Know, and I Love You. I'm Mark Gilla, and join me for Song Confusions, this week on Afterglow.
That's how much I love you, baby.
I'm Roger Collia, music director of the Evansville Philharmonic, and I'm excited to invite you to come inside the music with me with a new podcast coming to WNIN. In each episode of Inside the Music, My co-host Bill Haminger and I share behind-the-scenes stories and highlights from the latest Philharmonic concert. Celebrate the 90th anniversary of our Evansville Orchestra with us. Look for episodes of Inside the Music starting in early October on WNIN.org.
Mike Wicker was a great storyteller. In a book series, he introduced readers to Erika Lehmann, a German spy in World War II sent to Evansville to steal plans for the LST. I'm David James, and on 2 Main Street, my 2018 interview with Mike Wicker, author, teacher, and coach, who died last month. 2 Main Street airs Thursday at noon, Saturday at 11, presented by Jeffrey Berger Kim Wren and the Berger Wealth Team at Bayard Private Wealth Management.
Support for WNIN comes from listeners like you and from Junior Achievement of Southwestern Indiana, promoting economic empowerment through education, preparing students for the future. More information online at swindiana.ja.org.
It's the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson. Good to have you along on this Friday. Well, Hurricane Helene devastated areas of Florida, Georgia, Virginia, Tennessee, and South and North Carolina before Hurricane Milton came along. As WNIN's Tim Jagielo reported earlier this week, the Evansville area is responding to the disaster and coordinating with the larger relief effort.
Parks and cleaning supplies over here.
City Church in downtown Evansville is pulling items from the back of Kim McDonald's van
I've got a pet box. Yep, it's all pet.
and loading them into a 26-foot moving truck. McDonald is donating items for hurricane relief.
Let's see. Well, I brought paper products, toiletries. I bought some pet things, shoes, socks.
The church published a list of the items most needed to their website. This is one example of an Evansville area group working to ease the utter devastation of this past week, and an example of how to coordinate with the larger relief effort. Cliff Weaver is director of the City of Evansville, Vanderburgh County Emergency Management Agency, or EMA. He says a lot of people want to help, but it's important to do it in concert with the emergency agencies and only send items they request.
We were on Long Island during Hurricane Sandy, and we had so many donations coming in. They filled up a skating rink about the size of the Ford Center with donations, and probably 70% of that ended up in the landfill, unfortunately.
He says people have good intentions but can create a logistical problem for the receiving areas. He's seen this happen while working at the federal level.
All these trucks come in, all the donations come in, and there's no place to put them.
Because of this, the EMA posted online a set of donation parameters. Anyone hauling supplies need to email a specific logistical support administrator about that supply truck headed to disaster areas. If the right details aren't supplied, the truck will be turned away. Weaver says it's about safety.
Some of these areas, the landslide, the mountains just slid off into the valleys, and that's why so many people are missing right now.
As a constant presence to deliver what's needed, he says donating to the Red Cross is the most efficient way to help. Currently, 68 Evansville Region Red Cross volunteers are deployed to the hurricane zones. Region Executive Director Beth Sweeney says their effort started weeks before Helene hit.
So we opened evacuation shelters. We sent truckloads of supplies, snacks, water, food, cleanup kits, comfort kits, which are, basic toiletries and things, our cots, our blankets, everything that we needed to operate shelters and provide that immediate assistance.
And they're there now, ready for Hurricane Milton.
We are in Asheville, North Carolina. We are in parts of Florida. We are in parts of Georgia, working in those shelters and doing that mobile feeding right now.
Really good.
I would imagine we get good.
Yeah, it doesn't look as impressive as it is, but
City Church Office Manager Courtney Geisman is taping up another box in their steadily filling truck.
it is soap, sponges, toothbrush, toothpaste, dental floss.
These items are bound for Asheville, North Carolina, coordinating with nonprofit organization Beloved Asheville. The nonprofit will accept and distribute the supplies. City Church has been careful to accept only non-perishable items
based on what beloved Asheville needs, says City Church Executive Director Jeanette Allen.
One thing they just recently let us know was the need for new charcoal grills and charcoal as well. So that's something that we added to the list to collect. I also think we are in need of like pillows, blankets, things like that. We haven't got a lot of those.
It's been good. It's been really good. A lot of toilet paper, paper towels.
Moving company 2 men and a truck are handling the logistics. They are donating the vehicle and the employees to deliver it. The Asheville branch has 2 employees still missing since the hurricane. For WNIN News, I'm Tim Jagielo.
And Tim joins us live here in the studio now. As always, Tim, thank you so much for coming in.
Sure, John.
Now, I understand that City Church stopped collecting yesterday, on Thursday. How did it go for them?
Well, Courtney Geisman with City Church says that they stuffed it. Basically, the truck is full. It actually may be overweight of what they're supposed to haul, depending on weight limits. So actually, the drivers are going to weigh the truck and see if they have to move some things around, get another vehicle for that particular vehicle. And they shipped it out this morning at 8 a.m. And 2 men in a truck volunteered because, as it says, they have 2 workers missing from Asheville still, as far as I know, and they're the company that responded to the request. We're looking for a moving company to help us to transport these goods.
Sure. So who else was taking part in this collection effort?
And I can't speak to the whole area, of course. There could be more people, but I do know of a church in Henderson, River of Life Church. They're collecting for Charlotte, North Carolina aid, and they're actually still collecting until 5 p.m. today. They have several drop-off locations around Henderson. They're asking for water, meal replacement packs, protein bars, flashlight batteries, feminine hygiene products, things like that. And they're also working with a transport company to handle the logistics.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned in your story that the Emergency Management Agency, they posted requirements to truck items down. Any more details on that? I mean, you can't just send anything down there. There needs to be some parameters, right?
Right, and basically there was two posts that the EMA did, and the first one was about just shipping supplies down there, and they said specifically you need to email the Business Emergency Operations Center specifically and tell them this is for logistics support, this is what we're shipping, and why you need to get special access to the area. Say when you're going to plan to move the items and from where, and where you're going to head in there, and where are you going to arrive at the border of Western North Carolina and where? And if you don't do this, you'll likely be turned away. And that was a very interesting post to read because every single comment was about, how do I say this? They didn't like that they were being told. Basically, people didn't like being told how to help. And it was a lot of, we're going to help no matter what. It's a free country. But of course, talking to Cliff Weaver, it's like, no, you don't want to you don't want 50 trucks piled up in a zone that's flooded with stuff that people don't need, and then you don't have a refueling plan to get out. But hopefully people don't do that. But they released additional information today. And this is more for volunteers and people that want to travel in there. And this is kind of piggybacking off the prior post, which is that all groups need to have a verified host or recipient organization within that effective region who you've maintained regular communication with to make sure that, if you talked to them 2 weeks ago, do they still need the stuff? Can we still come in? Follow the needs expressed by the organization and who can directly accept and utilize what you bring. Make sure there's a confirmed local route and a fuel plan for your vehicle, and where you can safely basically get down there, refuel, drop your stuff off, disembark, and get out of there. Have a plan for meals and medical and other resources that you might need, and make sure that your participation isn't going to host or hinder any other rescue or help efforts. And if you travel in this area, it's against the strong urgings of the North Carolina Department of Transportation, basically. And those are the most recent posts about if you want to help yourself instead of just donating to a nonprofit. That's what they're suggesting.
Sure. Now, you mentioned dozens of volunteers from the local Red Cross already down there. Do we know anything else about the Red Cross response?
There are 2,100 volunteers nationally
Nationwide,
on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's 68 at least. The last I heard, there might be more by now. 68 from the local region, and they're working in shelters. They're helping with mobile feeding pantries. The local Red Cross emergency response vehicle was sent out more than a week ago, and this is the vehicle that can just kind of drive through affected neighborhoods and provide aid and support, warm meals for people that are in their neighborhood trying to salvage what they can. They can't cook because there's no power, and it's kind of for that. They also have virtual workers who are doing casework for individual families. And as far as on the ground, they also have mental health volunteers in person. And, Beth Sweeney, who we heard in the story, says that this is among the worst, if not the worst, damage that they've seen in their relief efforts.
Yeah. And they've been doing these kinds of relief efforts for many, many years. Well, Tim, anything else to add that we haven't touched on here?
Well, I am producing a story that's going to involve talking about climate change, and she said a lot of things that were interesting that could point to things getting worse because of climate change.
You're talking about Beth Sweeney?
Beth Sweeney, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so she says that the Red Cross, they actually agree with and believe in that climate change is real and it's making disasters worse. And in talking to the Kentucky State climatologist, whether disasters are bad, he says that these disasters are kind of part of a pattern of hurricanes that are kind of ongoing. So while a big disaster, the hurricanes themselves are not outside of the normal hurricane patterns, even though they're devastating. And so this is information I'm able to use for the story I'm going to do for NPR about talking about climate change.
Sure. All right, that is WNIN's Tim Jagielo. Tim, as always, thank you very much. We appreciate all your work. This is the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. Coming up, we're going to hear about a new podcast involving the Evansville Philharmonic. It's called Inside the Music. It's being produced by WNIN. We'll learn more about that coming up on the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. Hope you can stay with us.
I'm Christopher Kimball from Milk Street Radio. Do grocery store labels actually mean anything? Are there definitions for terms like natural, high in fiber, even healthy?
The FDA actually does have a definition of healthy.
And what is it?
It's a low bar.
Decoding labels at the supermarket with Tamar Haspel. That's coming up this week on Milk Street Radio from PRX.
Mike Wicker was a great storyteller. In a book series, he introduced readers to Erika Lehmann, a German spy in World War II sent to Evansville to steal plans for the LST. I'm David James, and on 2 Main Street, my 2018 interview with Mike Wicker, author, teacher, and coach, who died last month. 2 Main Street airs Thursday at noon, Saturday at 11, presented by Jeffrey Berger Kimrin and the Berger Wealth Team at Bayard Private Wealth Management.
Wait, it's almost time for the WNIN Fall Pledge Drive. Favorite programs like Wait, Don't Tell Me offer you the news of the week in a ha-ha funny way. But programs like this aren't free. It costs WNIN $10,661 a year to bring you the weekly news quiz. If you love programs like this, please consider making a gift of support today. Renew your membership or donate for the very first time at 812-423-5678 or online at WNIN.org.
In the late 1950s, vibraphonist Terry Gibbs put together an orchestra of top West Coast jazz musicians and arrangers so dynamic that it came to be known as the Dream Band. I'm David Brent Johnson, inviting you to join me for a centennial celebration with the Dream Big Band of Terry Gibbs this week on Nightlights.
Support for WNIN comes from listeners like you and from Premier Productions. Elmo, Abby Cadabby, and Cookie Monster sing and dance with their friends at Sesame Street Live. Say hello. Wednesday, October 16th at 6 p.m. at the Old National Events Plaza. Tickets available at SesameStreetLive.com.
It's the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson. Good to have you along on this Friday. Well, for 90 years now, the Evansville Philharmonic has entertained and educated tri-state music fans. Inside the Music is a new podcast produced by WNIN, and it gives listeners an opportunity to learn more about classical music, its composers, conductors, and performers. WNIN's Peggy Pirro talks with Philharmonic music director Roger Callia and co-host Bill Heminger about the show and what listeners can expect.
Listeners, of course, are familiar with your pre-concert conversations that air before the broadcast of the Philharmonic here on WNIN. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how the podcast came to be. Roger?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'll be honest with you. I've always enjoyed speaking with Bill about music. And Bill and I would typically do conversations for social media purposes and, of course, the WNIN broadcast about the music. So we just decided last season, why don't we create a podcast that could reach a wide variety of listeners and talk about the performances and sort of do a post-concert recap of each performance, what we enjoyed about the performance, diving into the composers and the pieces themselves. And I think that was the goal of this podcast, is to kind of introduce listeners to the Evansville Philharmonic, but also what they can expect from an Evansville Philharmonic performance.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's easy to talk to Roger, and there's so much to say about this music and the cultural importance of the music, and the cultural importance of our town and the life of music in our town. So this is, at least for me, a small way to get at that.
So what can we look forward to with respect to the podcast, with the first episode?
The first episode's really going to dive into our opening night concert of the 90th anniversary. So we really dive into the programming process and how I put that 90th anniversary season together. We also dive into the particular pieces that we performed on the concert.
Right. Yeah. And that's a question of the programming I'll ask him all the time. I'm always curious. How do you come up with a program? What pieces do you select? What balance are you looking for, and so on? It's always just very interesting.
And I also like the fact that we also dive into, Bill, just the reaction after the concert. How we felt about it.
Well, you know how I feel, so that's good.
And something we'll do in future episodes, of course, is actually bring in guest performers, which is exciting.
Well, this is the 90th year, the 90th anniversary of the orchestra. What have we seen and heard over these years? I know you haven't been here for all those 90 years. Bill, maybe you have.
Thanks a lot. Not quite.
What have we seen and heard over these 90 years?
Just the incredible growth of the orchestra and I would say the variety of music that the orchestra can do. Not many orchestras can do the music of Mahler, then go to Beethoven, and then perform a Broadway musical, and then perform jazz music. I mean, there's such versatility in this orchestra. The Victory Theater is a gem. I will say that. It's a gem to have that beautiful theater and perform there every month, every couple of weeks, because acoustically it's fantastic, and also just visually it's stunning, I think. I mean, you just look at it. It's a beautiful old... It used to be an old vaudeville movie theater.
What are you hoping the listeners are going to take away from this podcast?
Oh, well, that they'll see that music is a whole lot deeper and more complicated and more interesting, maybe, or what goes into creating the music, creating the programs of the music. And, of course, you can always delve into the history and all these crazy composers and all that. I mean, this is such a richness, so that's what I hope.
Yeah, and Bill, you put that beautifully, I think, just to show that we are passionate people who want to connect with as many people as possible. I mean, when you think about it, I have a very unique job, and I'm a normal person. I like watching, college basketball and, going to the grocery store and doing these types of things, but I happen to have a very so-called unique job as a conductor, and I think part of this podcast is showing and highlighting the fact that we have this great orchestra, and that part of the reason I'm a conductor is that I just love working with people, and you get to do that with this job. And also to showcase the fact that the 90th anniversary season is a really big one for us. We're doing some really neat concerts, great collaborations, And we have some incredible guest artists who are going to be joining us.
And you can find the first episode of Inside the Music very soon now, any day now, on WNIN.org, and we hope you will enjoy that. Well, this is the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. Coming up, the Sports Chat, also the Weekend Notebook. Hope you can stay with us.
I'm Peggy Pirro, and on the latest episode of the Food From Here podcast, we hear from urban agriculture and natural resources educator Amanda Bradshaw Burks of the Vanderburgh County Purdue Extension. Learn how the Extension serves the community and get Amanda's recipe for using up your end-of-the-season homegrown tomatoes. Food From Here is sponsored by Swerka & More, whose Veterans Day celebration Friday, November 1st, features a catered lunch and a musical performance by members of the Evansville Philharmonic. Details at swerka.org on the special events page.
Mike Wicker was a great storyteller. In a book series, he introduced readers to Erika Lehmann, a German spy in World War II sent to Evansville to steal plans for the LST. I'm David James, and on 2 Main Street, my 2018 interview with Mike Wicker, author, teacher, and coach, who died last month. 2 Main Street airs Thursday at noon, Saturday at 11, presented by Jeffrey Berger Kim Rin and the Berger Wealth Team at Bayard Private Wealth Management.
Wait, it's almost time for the WNIN Fall Pledge Drive. Favorite programs like Wait, Don't Tell Me offer you the news of the week in a ha-ha funny way. But programs like this aren't free. It costs WNIN $10,661 a year to bring you the weekly news quiz. If you love programs like this, please consider making a gift of support today. Renew your membership or donate for the very first time at 812-423-5678 or online at WNIN.org.
I love you.
This week on Afterglow, it's a case of mistaken identity in the Great American Songbook, as I look at songs with the same title that are often confused for one another. Songs like Who Can I Turn To, How Little We Know, and I Love You. I'm Mark Gilla, and join me for Song Confusions, this week on Afterglow.
That's how much I love you, baby.
I'm Roger Collia, Music Director of the Evansville Philharmonic, and I'm excited to invite you to come inside the music with me with a new podcast coming to WNIN. In each episode of Inside the Music, my co-host Bill Hamminger and I share behind-the-scenes stories and highlights from the latest Philharmonic concert. Celebrate the 90th anniversary of our Evansville Orchestra with us. Look for episodes of Inside the Music starting in early October on WNIN.org.
Support for WNIN comes from listeners like you and from the Indiana Secretary of State, reminding eligible Hoosiers that Election Day is November 5th. Information about the security of Indiana's elections, finding polling locations, and tips on making a plan to get to the polls can be found at indianavoters.com.
This is the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson. Good to have you along. And it's time now for this week's Sports Chat with Jevin Redman. Jevin, thank you so much for being with us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, here it is, already week 8 of the high school football season, the next to last weekend of the regular season. Let's recap week 7, if we could, Jevin, and what's on tap for tonight.
Yeah, so the big game last week was Memorial and Wrights, 2 top 10 teams. Wrights in Class 4A, Memorial in Class 3A, and Memorial's offense continues to really dominate. They beat Wrights 47-7. Memorial's quarterback, Matthew Fisher, who's a senior, he's actually going to IU to pitch for baseball on scholarship, but he was 12 for 16, threw for 350 yards, had 4 touchdowns, also rushed for 2. And with that, Memorial's head coach, John Hurley, was named the Colts NFL Coach of the Week, received a plaque on Tuesday, and the school received donations for the athletic fund. So it's a big week for Memorial. They stay number 1 in Class 3A. They're the only undefeated team in the city, and they play at Vincennes tonight. So if Memorial wins, then they would clinch at least a share of the regular season title. They play Castle Week 9, which could have implications as far as winning it outright. Other matchups tonight, John. As far as a good matchup on paper, you've got Jasper at North, pretty even teams there. Both are 3-4. And as you mentioned, Week 8, just 2 regular season games left. And this Sunday is the sectional draw at 5 o'clock, and a lot to look forward to that. I want to mention one more game as well.
Sure.
Outside of the city, North Posey plays at Southridge. That is for the PAC Small School Division regular season championship. Both teams are 4-0. North Posey 6-1 overall. Southridge is 5-2. So that'll be a great game to watch.
Sure. And it looks like great football weather tonight as well.
Yeah, it should be. Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Well, also in the high school scene, let's talk a little bit about high school soccer.
Yes.
What do you have going on there?
Yeah, so it was a very busy week with sectionals, both boys and girls. Tomorrow is the championship for both boys and girls. The girls play in the afternoon. City teams that are playing in Class 3A, Sectional 16 at Memorial, it'll be North against Castle. That is a 2 o'clock start. Also in Class 2A, Mater Dei plays Mount Vernon. Mater Dei is 14-2. That's a 1 o'clock start at the EVSC soccer field. And then also Evansville Christian is playing in the 1A Sectional 48 Championship against Pike Central at 2 o'clock tomorrow at South Spencer High School. So that's on the girls' side.
Right.
And then 2 matches to mention, John, on the boys' side tomorrow. Castle against Harrison. That'll be at Castle High School at 7 o'clock tomorrow. And I think the biggest match of the weekend in soccer sectionals is the championship at Heritage Hills for Class 2A. It'll be 14-2 Memorial against 16-1 Heritage Hills. That is a 7 o'clock start tomorrow.
That should be a great matchup. Well, let's take a little bit of a look at the baseball playoffs here. It looks like the Yankees have advanced, and there's more happening as well.
Yeah, what an exciting, really first round with the divisional series.
Yeah.
You had some kind of rivalries, interdivision matchups with the Phillies and Mets. The Mets upset the Phillies, who were one of the favorites to win the World Series. So the Mets are in the NLCS. You mentioned the Yankees beating the Royals. Now, who will they play? We'll find out tonight and tomorrow. Tonight, Game 5 of the division series. Bitter rivals, Dodgers and Padres. That game is in L.A. at 7:08 tonight. Then tomorrow, the Guardians against the pesky Tigers. They're still fighting tough. That's a Game 5 of the ALDS at 7:08 tomorrow night. So 2 very fun Game 5s coming up.
No doubt. We might see a Subway World Series this year.
It's still a possibility,
Yes, indeed. I guess Dodgers and Yankees is probably the most likely scenario. But as we've said, baseball is so unpredictable, you just never know.
Absolutely.
That's Jevin Redmond with the Sports Chat. Jevin, as always, thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
The Friday Wrap continues right after this.
I'm Peggy Pirro, and on the latest episode of the Food From Here podcast, we hear from urban agriculture and natural resources educator Amanda Bradshaw Burks of the Vanderburgh County Purdue Extension. Learn how the Extension serves the community and get Amanda's recipe for using up your end-of-the-season homegrown tomatoes. Food From Here is sponsored by Swerka & More, whose Veterans Day celebration Friday, November 1st, features a catered lunch and a musical performance by members of the Evansville Philharmonic. Details at swerka.org on the special events page.
Thank you to all of our current WNIN sustainers. Thanks to you, we've been able to bring you 2 Main Street and the Friday Wrap, increase coverage on the stories that mean the most to you, and give you 24/7 access to our content on your devices. If you've been thinking about becoming a sustainer, now is the perfect time to join and help sustain our growing newsroom and efforts. Simply make an ongoing monthly donation from your checking account or credit card. And start the process now at WNIN.org.
I'm Christopher Kimball from Milk Street Radio. Do grocery store labels actually mean anything? Are there definitions for terms like natural, high in fiber, even healthy?
The FDA actually does have a definition of healthy.
And what is it?
It's a low bar.
Decoding labels at the supermarket with Tamar Haspel. That's coming up this week on Milk Street Radio from PRX.
In the late 1950s, vibraphonist Terry Gibbs put together an orchestra of top West Coast jazz musicians and arrangers so dynamic that it came to be known as the Dream Band. I'm David Brent Johnson, inviting you to join me for a centennial celebration with the Dream Big Band of Terry Gibbs this week on Nightlights.
Mike Wicker was a great storyteller. In a book series, he introduced readers to Erika Lehmann, a German spy in World War II sent to Evansville to steal plans for the LST. I'm David James, and on 2 Main Street, my 2018 interview with Mike Wicker, author, teacher, and coach, who died last month. 2 Main Street airs Thursday at noon, Saturday at 11. Presented by Jeffrey Berger, Kim Wren, and the Berger Wealth Team at Bayard Private Wealth Management.
Support for WNIN comes from listeners like you and from the Indiana Secretary of State, reminding eligible Hoosiers that Election Day is November 5th. Information about the security of Indiana's elections, finding polling locations, and tips on making a plan to get to the polls can be found at indianavoters.com.
It's the Friday Wrap on WNIN FM. I'm John Gibson. Thanks for joining us on this Friday. Well, time now for the Weekend Notebook, and it is a busy weekend around the tri-state. Lots of things happening. Let's start with perhaps the most obvious event that's going on. That would be the West Side Nut Club Fall Festival, the biggest festival here in Evansville. It continues through Saturday night on West Franklin Street between Wabash and St. Joe Avenues. More than 130 nonprofits are operating food booths. You'll also find carnival rides and games for kids of all ages. There's daily entertainment on the main stage. And that big half-pot drawing, I was just checking the latest on that. It is now beyond $1.2 million and continuing to rise rather quickly. That's the West Side Nut Club half-pot. At the festival tonight, the amateur hour finals begin at 7 p.m. For tomorrow, the final day of the festival, we have the Pet Parade beginning at 10 a.m., and then the main parade starts at 4:30 tomorrow afternoon. And the drawing for the half pot, that'll be an online drawing, and that will happen Saturday evening after 7 p.m. Also happening here in Evansville, it's the Haunted Historic Evansville Ghost Walks. The walking tours begin at First Presbyterian Church at 2nd and Mulberry Streets about every 20 minutes. The tours will highlight the district's history, architecture, prominent residents, and even ghost stories and spooky sightings. Ghost appearances, you can expect some of those, and they are portrayed by Evansville Civic Theater actors. At least we think so. Again, that's the Haunted Historic Evansville Ghost Walks. Those walking tours begin tomorrow evening at First Presbyterian Church at 2nd and Mulberry Streets. Moving on to Saturday now, it's the Market on Main in Henderson. That runs on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's happening in Central Park in Henderson. You'll find antiques, handcrafted items, food, even a chili cook-off happening during Market on Main in Henderson. Again, that event is tomorrow, Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Central Park in Henderson. Also happening on Saturday, should be nice weather for this, Fall Colors. That's a Fall Colors guided tour at Angel Mounds. You can go hiking with Angel Mound staff and learn more about local plants and their seasonal changes. That's happening at Angel Mounds tomorrow. That's a Fall Colors guided tour at that historic state site. Also happening tomorrow, it's the Newburgh Fall Fest. That happens from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Marcella Point on Old State Road 261 in Newburgh. The Newburgh Fall Fest includes food trucks, a beer garden, a live DJ from 8 to 10 p.m., kids' activities, local vendors, as well as a gift basket raffle. That's all happening at the Newburgh Fall Fest. It happens Saturday from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Marcella Point on Old State Road 261. That is in Newburgh. Also happening on Saturday, Fall Vibes on the Roof. The Arts Council will be hosting a hip-hop show curated by Nero Angelo, I should say. That's Nero Angelo. That's the Arts Council hosting a hip-hop show on the roof. Admission to the event is free. And if you don't know, the Arts Council is at 212 Main Street in downtown Evansville. That event starts at 7 tomorrow at the Arts Council on Main Street here in Evansville. Moving on to Sunday now, another big annual event, that is Fiesta Evansville. It happens from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sunday at Wesselman Park off Bakey Road here in Evansville. Fiesta Evansville is billed as the largest Latino festival in the region. It features international performers, cultural exhibits, international food booths, and live entertainment for the whole family. Again, that's Fiesta Evansville happening on Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Wesselman Park off Bakey Road in Evansville. Moving on to Sunday evening now, it's the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The original Columbia, Nell Campbell, will be on hand for a screening of the original Rocky Horror Picture Show with a live shadow cast and audience participation at Old National Events Plaza. You'll also see some memorabilia and artifacts, including an actual costume from the movie, a costume contest, and more. Tickets for the Rocky Horror Picture Show start at $30. We're told that props will be provided, so no outside props can be brought in to the Old National Events Plaza, but there will be props available for you at the Rocky Horror Picture Show that is happening Sunday evening at the Old National Events Plaza here in downtown Evansville. If you have an event you'd like us to share here on the Weekend Notebook, send that information to me at jgibson, that's the letter J, Gibson, at wnin.org, and we will do our best to get your event mentioned here on the Weekend Notebook. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining us on the Friday Wrap today. Also, a big thanks to our guests, Sarah Lesh of the Evansville Courier and Press. Also, thank you to WNIN's Tim Jagielo. A big thanks to WNIN's Peggy Pirro. Also, thanks to her guest, Roger Callia, and co-host Bill Heminger. They were talking about their new Inside the Music podcast that's coming up. Also, thanks to Jevin Redmond for the sports chat. Also, a big thanks to Jevin Redmond for engineering today's show. He's a Jevin of all trades, you might say. Also, a big thanks to Mariah Winnie for social media support. Thank you to Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations for their support. Also, of course, thanks to listeners like you for your support that make shows like the Friday Wrap possible on your public radio station. This is 88.3 WNIN FM, Evansville, Henderson, and Owensboro. With your support, we're building a better tri-state together. I'm John Gibson. Thank you so much for joining us on the Friday Wrap. And for this Friday, have a good weekend. That's a wrap.